Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Well, here we go, friends, with another episode of Gone to the Dogs podcast. I'm coming to you today on a Friday evening, actually late afternoon on Friday here on the Gulf of America. It's been a bright, sunny Chamber of Commerce day today here. And just, getting back into that weather that people love to encounter when they come down here to the beaches and so forth. Been watching a lot of documentaries on TV, on YouTube. I appreciate YouTube. We stream everything on TV here. We don't use cable TV. Everything comes through the internet. And we've been using Hulu as our primary source for local news and live TV and so forth. And I'm aware that a lot of people, I was talking to my cousin who lives out in Sacramento, California, God bless him, good conservative fella, that he uses YouTube TV for his live TV or viewing experiences. And I kind of defer to him because he's been in that line of business with the internet and so forth. He worked for the Comcast company for many years and deals and those sorts of things. But anyway, watching YouTube a lot lately. Of course, that's where we usually get our coon hunting programming through Cane Stream Media or Clayton Stark Outdoors and other sources. But I've been kicking back a little bit. We had a little, we've been kind of playing nursemaid, I guess is the word Ella has. Her daughter had complete total knee replacement surgery and needed a little help, as you can imagine. So Ella had been over there, and I've been here with the dogs, Louie and Lexi, the pair of black and tans with the short legs, the dachshunds. So I've had a lot of time to kind of kick back, put my feet up, and watch some TV, which I don't do very often. But I've been watching these documentaries about, particularly about Florida, the various out-of-the-way places. Everybody knows we have beaches down here, and that's what all the snowbirds come down for, and Highway 19 that goes down the Gulf, and then I guess it'd be Highway A1A over on the East Coast. Anyway, Florida and beaches just go together like bologna and light bread, as we say back in West Virginia. But anyway, watching these videos of these old towns and lamenting, as I'm apt to do at my age. People who are my age tend to grumble about the way things are changing. We don't like change. We like the good old days, as we say. And so anyway, I, kind of grumble about all this building that's going on down here, all the new homes, all the condos and the hotels and the shopping malls, and not so many malls anymore. I think online shopping has kind of put a spike in the heart of the traditional shopping mall. But I've just really enjoyed looking at the old Florida. It's the one I remember when I was here in the 60s going to college in Lakeland in Central Florida. Seemingly a land of endless cattle ranches and orange groves. Get out on a highway and between cities and drive for miles and miles and miles, seeing either the neat rows of orange trees or those Brahma humpback cattle out there grazing on endless pastures under the moss-draped oaks and around the cypress heads. That was the Florida I loved, the crystal clear lakes that were just teeming with largemouth bass and other species, brim, as the bluegills and sunfish and so forth are called down here. But that's no more, folks. Well, there are pockets. Yeah, there are pockets. But if the builders can have anything to do with it, they're going to ruin it down to the very last inch. It's like this song, take paradise and put up a parking lot. But anyway, that's my rant for today. But in watching these programs, I learned a lot about this state. Of course, I didn't grow up here in Florida, but I began coming in the 60s and have, come on a fairly regular basis all the way up to about 2012 when I moved down here permanently. And the more you look at the topography of Florida, the scrub with the palmettos and the thick, the thickets. I don't know any better way to say it. And the cypress heads with the knees sticking up to peel all the hide off your shins. It's not an inviting place, especially for a man with a coon dog. So I've already talked about the fact that I, didn't choose well for retirement when it comes to coon hunting. So Chamber of Commerce, again, is not going to be happy with me, but I would not advise any coon hunter to choose Florida as your retirement location. We have a very comfortable home that we have fixed and remodeled and so forth to have it just exactly the way we like it. And it's a great place for folks our age, great neighborhood, all the amenities that you would want and all, just not a place for hunters. Years ago, now I say that, I qualify that, if you're a hog hunter, if you're a deer hunter, you like to deer hunt with hounds, you're going to dig it down here. I don't see how a guy could squirrel hunt very well down here with a dog because it's just so darn thick. I don't think you'd have very much luck finding a squirrel to shoot. But anyway, the old man's rambling here, but I can imagine back when, around the turn of the century, before the builders got in here, that it was quite an adventure. And I'm told that game was very prevalent. And when I first came down here in the 60s, I met several guys that were coon hunters here. And when I came back in 2012, there were still quite a few, but the numbers have been reduced drastically. I rely on my friend Mac Britt, who lives about 2 hours south of me in a place called Parrish, Florida. He's my coon hunting connection anymore. Mac is just a great guy. And he and I talk quite often. And he's out there on a regular basis, hunting these, he calls them farms. They're big, they grow everything to eat down here in the wintertime when it's cold up there. As the temperatures start to warm a little bit, man, they're growing tomatoes right and left, all kinds of vegetables and all that stuff. The citrus is about done for Florida. I think there's like 1% of what it used to be, maybe some crazy thing due to this, what they call greening. There's a fly that causes, brings a disease. It's an invasive insect that has destroyed the orange industry. And if you would have seen it in the 60s the way I did when I came down to college, you just wouldn't believe it'd ever go away. But such is the changes that we encounter. So now here we are in the month of March. Important dates coming up for me to remember. It's the 6th of March as I'm talking to you today. This will air within a few days, actually, on the following Monday. March is an important month to me. It was my mother's birthday on the 19th. It's my wife's birthday on the 23rd. Our grandson on the 22nd. So March is a pretty important month to me. But when I lived up in Michigan, March meant that I'd start thinking about things thawing out enough that I could go coon hunting again after the winter freeze. Mother Nature teases the Michigan coon hunter. You'll get that January thaw where temperatures will rise and the snow will start to melt, and you think, well, that winter wasn't too bad before it slams you again and lasts probably up into April. But anyway, this is a ramble fest, as you can see. But I've enjoyed learning more about my state and seeing what an amazing place it is. I did a little bit of, I don't know what you call it, a travelogue on the way up to the Winter Classic. And I'm not going to get into all that again, but anyway, that's what I've been up to. I don't know what's been going on at your house. I know that it's the time of year. We're starting to get calls from people that want to come and visit our stud dog, and we appreciate that so very much. And so, springtime's coming, and hang in there if you're still in the frigid north, because it will change. I've always enjoyed reading. Always, since I was a kid. We'd have these mystery series like the Hardy Boys at our school, and I'd take a volume home each night and read that from cover to cover, bring it back the next day and get another one. I always enjoyed reading, and so I naturally took to reading Full Cry, American Cooner, Mountain Music, those magazines when I was a kid, because they were full of the thing that I like to do more than anything else, and that was go coon hunting or bear hunting with my dad and with the hounds that were always out back at our house. And I didn't have access to a lot of books about coon hunting back in that day. My experience came from those magazines that I mentioned. Now, with the exception of Full Cry, which is being continued, I understand. I haven't seen a new volume yet, but Ben Sheets has I don't say supposedly, I know that he has. He has purchased Full Cry from Jason and Danny Doobie and is putting together new issues for us. I know that UKC has exited the coonhound specific magazine market, if there is such a thing anymore, with the demise of coonhound bloodlines. PKC is barely hanging on with Pro Hound. Full Cry has, as I just mentioned, is there, but it's on life support right now. So anyway, we don't have good reading material that you can hold in your hand and prop your feet up and with a glass of iced tea or a favorite adult beverage maybe, and read the way that we used to. But as I went to UKC, and they had an extensive library there of volumes about hounds and hunting, I discovered some other books that I enjoy very much. One little book that I refer to every once in a while is the Coon Hunter's Handbook by Leon F. Whitney, a DVM, a doctor of veterinary medicine, and partner Acil B. Underwood, the Coon Hunter's Handbook. And I was down at a bookstore there in actually Portage, Michigan, one day, and as bookstores are prone to do, they'll have a sale table sitting outside. This store was in a strip mall, and they had, I think it was 5 or 6 copies of the Coon Hunter's Handbook for $3 each. So, of course, I bought all 6 of them. And I know one because I'm holding it in my hand, and there may be another one in my book collection that's part of it has never been unboxed since I moved to Florida. But this book and another one called The American Trail Hound by Fred Streaver, it says the Sportsman's Library, were the typical types of books that you got back in the day. The Coon Hunter's Handbook, let me see here, was first published in 1952. And then the American Trail Hound came along, let's see here, I think it was before that. It was published by A.S. Barnes and Company in New York in 1948, 2 years after I was born. But these books were typical of the books of that day in that they're more or less directed toward the beginner or the novice coon hunter. I'm sure guys like my dad, growing up there in Dixon County, Tennessee, had no manuals, no written material to help them along their way in learning how to train their tree dogs. I think, as is the case most of the time with coonhounds, any kind of tree dog, the dogs train themselves. They get out there and do what God instilled within them to do, and that's they have a prey drive that makes usually any and all varmints fair game, and they have that treeing instinct. Often when I would meet with media at a major event like Grand American Autumn Oaks World Championship, they would want me to explain what we were doing and what is a night hunt and what is a coonhound and what makes him different from other working dogs. And I would simply say, bird dogs point birds, retrievers retrieve ducks, coonhounds tree raccoons. That treeing instinct is interwoven into the DNA of that animal. And if you have a coonhound that won't tree, you're missing a very important element. It's kind of like having a car without a transmission. Anyway, this book, The American Trail Hound, was written by Charles Henry Streaver. Now, he was born in 1850, and he died in 1938, which was 8 years prior to my birth. The little inscription in the book says, among many hunting Streavers, in other words, the family was known to be a hunting family, he was known as the boss, and as such will be found in this and other tales of the outdoors we both loved and shared for 58 years of close companionship between father and son. So actually, this is a dedication to Fred Streaver's father, Charles Henry Streaver. And man, I can relate to that. I have a lot of memories mainly, but also have a lot of photos and a few times I got out the recorder or the video camera and recorded things that my dad said. And so, those are the archives of the Fielder family, which the hunting aspects of our family perhaps started with my great-grandfather, Haley, in Tennessee, who was a fox hunter. And then my dad and his brothers, who simply wanted to be able to have hunting dogs of their own as boys growing up on a farm. Very little entertainment, mostly just hard work. But they were hunters and fishers and loved, and they were typical boys. They loved to go to town, 8 miles to Dixon, Tennessee. Loved to go to the barn dances around through the country on Saturday afternoon, go to the picture show. And my dad says he remembers drinking his first soda or first pop, as we called it in West Virginia, and taking a drink of that and burping and having it come up through his nose. Oh, yeah. Must have been great. But I just love these old books. I love the history that they hold. And every time I open the yellowed pages of these books, I go on an adventure with these writers. I want to read just a little bit from the acknowledgement pages here by the author, and without getting too deep in the weeds and all. He says, this year of 1948 is the 31st since my first published hound story, quote, Father and I Hunt Foxes, end quote, in the old National Sportsman. The issue was June of 1917. Now, that's 3 years before my dad was born in 1920. It also marks a half-century of pleasant days of field with my trail hounds, of which I now have 43 in my kennel. I can never remember having that many dogs at one time, nor did my dad. When my mother would say, we've gone to the dogs, she was probably looking out at a kennel with a half dozen grown hounds and maybe a litter of puppies. During the past 17 years of continuing service as kennel editor of National Sportsman and Hunting and Fishing, 2 books, National Sportsman and Hunting and Fishing. These were 2 magazines that were available back there just prior to 1950. I have had many informative letters from America's houndsmen, great and small. I deplore that it's physically impossible to give proper credit by name to each. And then he goes on to thanks his editors and so forth, and the different magazines and all in these acknowledgments. But looking down through the chapters of this book, first of all, he deals with the prey animals in a chapter called American, boy, I'm having trouble today, folks. American Beasts Chaseable. Then he lists the different kinds of trail hounds and the different kinds of tree hounds, and on and on and on it goes. But it's a great old book. He talks here in chapter 15 about George Washington, the houndsman, of course, the father of our country. Just love these old books like this. They've got some really nice pictures. Of course, they're all in black and white. Seems like almost every page has a picture. And as was the case back in those days, they usually showed the dog and maybe a season's catch. Turning over to the Coon Hunter's Handbook, I wanted to share a chapter with you here called Training the Coon Dog. And I'm having a little trouble with my headphones here today. Chapter 8. And it's remarkable to me that as I get many emails and texts and occasional phone calls and so forth, the issues that the authors here, the Coon Hunter's Handbook, back in 1952 are addressing are essentially the issues that people are dealing with today. In this chapter called Training the Coon Dog, he says, if the reader will recall the qualifications mentioned in the preceding chapters, he will realize that the first and foremost requirement of the coon dog is that he have certain natural aptitudes. Let us then start with a dog which we are convinced has these aptitudes. How are we going to train him? A good many methods have been suggested, but the one which has been used by the authors to the best effect will be described first. We shall, of course, assume that there is no other dog with whom he can be trained. Now, I get this a lot. I don't have another dog. This is my first dog. How do I go about this? Where do I start? And I think with our friend that we had on an earlier podcast that acquired the red bone puppy and that my buddy Up and Moore is working with would find himself in exactly this situation, he and his father. Let us suppose that the dog starts out as a rank amateur, but with the proper potentialities. And, just to reflect, the dog has been shown to have ambition. When you turn him loose, he doesn't stand under your feet. And he's out there looking for something. He may not know what yet, but all the smells and sights and sounds, intrigue this pup. He's bright. He's inquisitive. And he's using that nose, which he will learn to use as a very effective tool as his training moves along. Okay, let us suppose that the dog starts out as a rank amateur, but with the proper potentialities. Then we're going to train him to range out wide, to find only coon tracks or tracks of animals that live in trees, to follow these tracks until the animal climbs a tree, and to sit at the foot of the tree and bark until we arrive there, showing him our appreciation for his splendid efforts and catching the animal either alive or dead. But how shall we go about it? Now, right there, Dr. Whitney has described pretty much the way I described coon hunting to a reporter from a local TV station. The first thing we must do is to get the dog somehow to understand what we want him to do. Yeah, that is paramount. As each step is properly performed by the dog, we must get across to him in any way we can the fact that we're pleased. It isn't necessary to reward him with food. Appreciation will be all the satisfaction and reward he will want. A good friendly thumping on the side with the open hand will repay him 10 times more than hamburger steak. Well done, good and faithful servant, is the thought that you must communicate to him. He doesn't want to be rewarded. He simply wants to serve you. Well, we do hear a lot about training with food and how food is such a good motivator for animals. My good friend and fellow podcaster Heath Hyatt has done several issues with that under that premise. But I'm sure pleasing one's master also comes into play in any training regimen. The greatest firmness is the greatest mercy. That's a quote. And these words apply especially in dog training. You must be absolutely firm at all times with the dog. Never start anything you can't finish. Never allow a single slip to occur, or it will undo a great deal of the good you've already done. Wow, that's a big order right there. But I've always said repetition and consistency are the tools, our best tools in training a pup, whether it's a house dog or a dog that we're going to hopefully hunt with for the rest of that dog's life. Okay, but this is an example of the kind of reading that was available to hound hunters back in the day, and those that were able to access it. And I think prior to the days of TV, or about the time TV was coming along, these kinds of books were well read. I'll go on just a little bit here. First, teach the dog some rudimentary words. Get him to understand the meaning of a few phrases, and always be sure to use the same words for the same thing. Good boy is the most important idea to convey to the dog. The second most important is don't touch. No one needs to be taught how to make his dog understand what the first one means, but it's not always easy for the novice to understand how to get the latter meaning across. We do it in this way. Take the dog into a room where he can't run away. Throw a large piece of meat on the floor in front of him. Your wife might have something to say about that if we're talking about on the carpet or her polished hardwood floors. Throw a large piece of meat on the floor in front of him and say, don't touch. He will touch it, of course, because the words mean nothing to him. As he does so, slap his face very hard. Now, wow, I'm sure there's probably 1 million dog trainers online that would tell you not to do that. Unfortunately, when I grew up, that's the only way we had to communicate the word no to a dog, was to put something behind it that was uncomfortable to the dog. And what I'd used was a pair of old, worn, flexible leather gloves, and just take them by the cuffs, both gloves in one hand, and, pop the dog across the muzzle with the word no. And he goes on to say, as he does so, slap his face very hard, throw the meat down again and say, don't touch. If he tries it again, you must slap him again. But if he is an intelligent dog, this usually is nearly enough. Yeah, it's difficult to communicate the word no, but no is negative. And it is one of the first things that we teach to a dog, and it's one of the easiest things for them to understand. Dogs don't understand those long, frilly sentences. Now, Bowser, Daddy's told you time and time again not to try to take that meat when I throw it on the floor. So, hey, how about it, buddy? This time just sit there and don't bother it, okay? Or we use a sharp no followed by the use of the gloves or whatever training tool you have available. Once again, no cruelty to the dog. You're not doing anything to harm the dog, okay? You just have to be careful that the dog understands what's going on and that he's uncomfortable, he doesn't like it, and therefore he stops the behavior. Well, I'm not going to go into a whole litany of training commands and so forth, but it's interesting that even back here in 1952, there was training material available. And boy, this sure opens the door for me to rant a little bit. If you're relying on the internet for all your information about how to train that coonhound puppet you just invested what you used to be able to buy a car for back in 1952, I'd say the median price of a car back that time was probably less than $2,000. And it's nothing to have to pay that much for a puppy nowadays, especially a well-bred pup out of, well-known bloodlines. So anyway, you've got this investment and you need help. You don't know what to do. So you go online and you open yourself up to all kinds of misery. Don't do that. What I would suggest doing, and I am certainly available to you if you want to contact me, if you lend any credibility to the things I say, or you have any faith in my years of training and working with coonhounds, contact me and I will work personally with you, back and forth, usually with text messages and in some cases by telephone. And I'm happy to do that because I want to give you good information that will help you and help that dog. I don't want to ruin that dog. And you don't either. I know that, and you would not purposely set out to do that. But if we can avoid that, that's my goal. But what I'm saying to you, it doesn't have to be me at all. Follow someone on the message forums like the coon hunting conversations. And, you find somebody on there and you think it makes sense, seems to be reasonable, seems to have some knowledge. Contact that person and tell them about what's going on with you and your dog and what stage of the journey you're in. And I'm betting in most cases that individual will help you, be glad to help you. That's going to be your best bet rather than, you're going to get everything. If you just put a question out there, what's the best way for me to train my 6-month-old puppy without another dog? And you're going to get the full gamut. And you're going to get some people tell you if you take him out for a week and he doesn't tree his own coon, then you need to shoot him. I mean, it can be that extreme. So you have to be careful out there. I would hope that you'll find somebody that really, cares as you do about hounds. It's fun to work with these hound puppies. And I see this on the internet a lot, and I have to agree to a point that we really don't train these dogs. The training we do is with the commands, putting a recall on the dog so that we can catch him when we're ready to go home, where we can talk to the dog and make him understand that he's in harm's way and he needs to stop what he's doing and pay attention to us. Those sort of things, the training to load into the back of the truck so we don't have to be embarrassed when we go with our buddies and we have to lift the dog up and put him in the truck. Things like that. But, really the dogs are bred for what we want them to do, and that is to hunt, strike, trail, and tree raccoons. And you may be a big game hunter hunting bobcats, or you may be hunting coyotes, or you may be hunting bear or mountain lion or wild hogs. Whatever your game is, the coon hunting consists of those elements: hunting, striking, trailing, and treeing raccoons. So, that needs to be in the dog's genetic makeup. That needs to be passed down from his parents. And then it's your job to go out and to fine-tune the dog. And most of that fine-tuning will come about simply by hunting the dog repeatedly, giving the dog an opportunity to find game that he can strike, that he can trail, and that he can tree. And, finding the place to hunt is going to be one of your biggest challenges. And it needs to be a safe place. It needs to be a place where you have permission to be. It needs to be a place where, there is ample habitat for raccoons, either around farms or creeks or ponds or things of that nature where raccoons, inhabit. I think I enjoyed that baked ziti a little too much for dinner. So you're getting the effects of that. But anyway, these old books, man, are they a treasure? If you can get a hold of some of them on Facebook, not Facebook, but on eBay or somewhere like that, I don't know if even these publishing companies, this Coon Hunter's Handbook has a nice jacket on it, and it says Field and Stream Outdoor Series. I don't think Field and Stream magazine's even still published, at least in a hard copy form. But if you can get a copy of one of these old magazines or old books, you'll enjoy reading them for sure. If nothing else to say, we don't do it that way anymore. We found a different way and a better way. And you'll have some of that for sure. And expect, to be talked down to a little bit. If you are a coon hunter of any amount of experience, you're going to probably say, well, I knew that. He didn't need to tell me that. But anyway, get yourself some of the old books. Hunter, Trader, Trapper was a magazine that was published back in those days, and it provided fireside reading material for many hunters, especially across the Midwest when those cold, hard winters set in, when you could no longer get out there with the dogs. And, spring is coming for sure. Here we are in March already. It will be here, and we'll see some of the super stakes, pup hunts, and those kinds of events coming up. And these organizations just come at us with truck hunts and $100,000 hunts and all of this at a rapid-fire pace. So if you've got an extra nice dog that you want to, and you enjoy competition hunting, which I did for so many years, and then, of course, was involved with it from the other side of the desk for many, many more years, I know this is a time of year that you're certainly looking forward to. Those of you who live in the country or got a little patch out there behind the barn or the kennel, probably thinking about gardening, turning that ground over and getting things ready to plant. It was always an exciting time for me, a woeful time for me when I was a kid, because we had a fairly good-sized garden plot in our lot there. We were city folks, really. I mean, we lived right on the very edge of town. We go out across our back gate and across the neighbor's lot. We crossed the highway and we were in the country. So we were close to being country folk. But Dad was old school, and we turned that entire garden spot with a shovel, with a spade, a sharp spade. Take that foot, press down on that blade, get that shovel full of that old black West Virginia, I guess is mostly clay. Turn it over, bust that clod with the back of that shovel, reach over the width of a shovel head again, jam it down in the earth with your foot, lift it up, turn it over, bust the clods, move over. You do about 5 of those shovel widths at a time, and you're moving backwards, of course. You don't want to be stepping in what you just tilled or turned up. Did that many, many times as a kid. Some of you listeners here probably did the same thing. Of course, my grandfather did that with his team of mules, but he was planting more ground than we were. But till that garden up and leave a little pathway between those sections so you could walk down through there and water those plants, and that's where you could hoe out the centers between the rows of the corn and the various plants, keep that ground loose. And it was always an exciting time, though, to see the lettuce and onions come up first. And little by little, some things you plant from seeds. Sometimes you plant potatoes, for instance. We planted those Kennebec potatoes there, cut them into quarters and planted the potatoes and hilled the dirt up around them, and on and on and on it went, the cycle of life. But that's the way I was raised, and it was a good time because my mother made some awesome suppers and so forth from the vegetables that came out of that garden year after year after year. My dad was a great gardener, and he loved to do that. And although I didn't really inherit that love for it the way he did, both my grandmothers were gardeners and gardened up into their 80s. I remember seeing them out there in the garden in their gingham dresses and their aprons and their sunbonnets, hoeing and gathering and watering and doing all the things. They learned, as a way of life to feed their families. But I think they enjoyed it too. So that's my heritage, and I know that each of us have a heritage. I've been fortunate to live now nearly 80 years. Unfortunately, not everyone gets that opportunity, so I'm very, very grateful, very thankful for my heritage, my family. And it consists of more than just the dogs, but the dogs, of course, are a very important part of it. Okay, well, I've rambled on here almost 50 minutes. That'd probably be a pretty good place to cut this off and ship it off to the producer. But if you get a chance to get on eBay, go through there, see if you can find some of these old books, get them. You'll enjoy them. And I tell you, most of the guys that have these volumes are going to be pretty hesitant about loaning them to you. I don't know what it is about loaning books, but they have a tendency to forget where they belong. And I have, on occasion, loaned a book or two to very special friends, but it's just the nature of the beast. In fact, I could probably start an outdoor store with the stuff that I've loaned people over the years. Rolling cages are one that I remember, tracking devices, Tritronics, all these kind of things that somehow, after I loaned them, they just didn't belong to me anymore. But anyway, what's a little training collar or a rolling cage among friends, right? Well, I hope you've got a great prospect to go into the spring hunts if this night hunt game is your huckleberry. We always look forward to this time of year. after those cold Michigan winters, because we knew we're gonna jump on a plane in February and go down to Southeastern Walker Days in Salisbury, North Carolina, and then we were going to go to Walker Days in April, usually in Indiana. Always a big event, springtime. Still no leaves on the trees really to speak of, so easier to find those coons. And then, let's see, April, and then May was Blue Tick Days. Actually, the first weekend in May was Black and Tan Days, usually down around Flora, Illinois, but sometimes up in central Ohio, like Wapakoneta or someplace like that, Mount Vernon. And Blue Tick Days, I believe, was in May as well. I'd like to go down to Hope, Arkansas for the BBCHA Fall Roundup, which I've jumped ahead to the fall. But Ashland, Ohio in March had the blue tick hunt there. So, that got things into full swing, and June, I believe it's American Redbone Days, July, National Redbone Days, August was Plot Days. Then we found ourselves in Autumn Oaks on Labor Day weekend. Following that, the Texas State and the Canadian Autumn Open up at Owen Sound, Ontario, and then going into the zone hunts and the finals for the World Championship. And then that rocked on. We started a new year then. After 1988, we'd start our new year with the Winter Classic in Albany, Georgia. So, it was a busy job, a busy time of traveling all across mostly the eastern seaboard, but from, Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma eastward. And had many great experiences over the years with all that. So those were my years, year after year after year. And now I'm sitting here on the Gulf of America, just enjoying the beautiful blue skies. We have the most beautiful skies here in Florida. If you haven't been to Florida, you need to come, but you need to come pretty quick because it's going to get hot down here, and you're not going to enjoy it much until about November this fall. I want to take this opportunity to thank Buddy Woodbury out in actually he's in Washington State. Jess that works for him there in the office, just great people to work with. Was just on the phone today with Jess, drop shipping some books. They had run out of their supply of Gone to the Dogs, and we'll remind you that you can pick up a copy of Gone to the Dogs, A Coon Hunter's Journey at W Supply. My buddy Big Mark Zepp also handles the books. W Supply there. That's an interesting way to say it. W Hunting Supply. They have everything you need or want, really. Jess was talking about getting a couple of shirts out as we were speaking. I hear my dachshund Louie has decided to join in on the podcast today. So, he must be telling me it's time to shut up. He's got something better for me to do. But anyway, back to our friends at W Hunting Supply. Can't beat them. Great customer service, friendly folks, hunters, understand, houndsmen. Just a great company to deal with. And I know you have choices out there. There's a lot of good companies, and we're blessed in this sport. But W Hunting Supply is one I guarantee you won't regret if you do business with them. Also, as I mentioned, markzepp.com. Zepp's got predator calls of every kind, especially his coon squallers. check him out. He's online at markzepp.com. I would be remiss in this episode if I didn't mention my longtime friend, originally from Kalamazoo, Michigan, is where I met him when I went to work for UKC and later moved to Huntington, North Carolina. Oh, excuse me, that's not right. Huntington, Indiana. And that was my good friend, George Danielson. I got the sad news just this past week or so that George had passed away. I saw him at Autumn Oaks, and he surprised me by being in a wheelchair. And I learned that he was battling cancer. His son, Todd Wilcox, and his grandson, Zach, were there with him, and we had a good visit. George was a special friend to me. He was the kind of guy that I hope each one of you that are listening will encounter in your journey with dogs. He was never boastful. He was never angry. He was never, how can I say, a quiet guy, a guy that had tremendous knowledge about hounds, whether it was coon hounds, cur dogs, feist dogs, beagles. And that was kind of the progression as these challenges to his health came along. When I met George, he was a coon hunter. And he had walker dogs. He had red-bone dogs. He was from a coon hunting family. His brother Dale was a hunter, and I think maybe another or two of his brothers were hunters. But George was one of those people that when you met them, you just said, man, that's a nice guy. You know, he's a really, really good guy. And I couldn't give George any more of an epitaph or a send-out, but, buddy, you sure made an impression on me. And my time that I spent with you was quality time, every single minute. And our conversations will be missed more than you'll ever know. I learned a lot from you. I respected what I heard from you because I knew it was truth, or as the closest to the truth that you could possibly determine. George, I hope to meet you again someday, but I just want you to know that I enjoyed our friendship, perhaps as much as anyone that I ever met in my life. You're a good one, buddy, and I pray for Zach, your grandson, and for Todd, and for all the family. His dear Diane, his wife, had passed away a few years ago. George was a very caring man. He cared for his mother-in-law until she died. Just always giving. And I know his friend Bob Cleveland up there misses him, and just so many that knew George. So I just wanted to dedicate this podcast to the memory of George Danielson, one of the finest men I ever met. With that said, folks, we're going to close this episode. It's been a bit of a ramble fest. Trying to encourage you to get back and find some of these old books and read them. I think you'll enjoy them very much. Slow down a little bit. You know, I do want to also send my prayers and for safety for our members of our armed services as they're engaged in conflict at this time, and for their families, that you keep them all encouraged and assured that our cause is just, and that God will be with us and will be with your loved ones as they find themselves in harm's way. With that said, folks, this is the old and getting older every day. Coon hunter Steve Field are coming at you with this. It's not a lament. It's really a brag. Anybody asks where I am, just tell them he's gone to the dogs.